Our next speaker is someone who's a friend of the foundation. Every single Transformers UK event and other events that we do, Rowan is a guest that we always open invites. So it's up to him if he joins us or not, but luckily for us, he always comes. So Rowan, if you want to join us, and let's see if we can share your presentation. So Rowan, introduce yourself, sir, and good luck.
Lovely, thanks a lot, Mohsin. Thanks a lot for inviting me back. But yeah, third year, I think. I'm going to be talking about washing today. I'm a bit too old, am I? I'm going to talk about the secret life of washing. So let's jump in. I'm going to introduce myself in a minute. So I want to talk about denim. Denim is a washing form of art, like Leanne's talked about earlier, and talk you through why the materials are so important to get what you want out of the washing, and then talk you through steps, but more like industry steps. What are the key steps to look at and understand? And then at the end, I'm going to look at a wash recipe summary so you can understand, see the key areas, and then the extra points after that. And I'm going to give you a couple of further reading to look into. So, hi, I'm Rowan Hunt. I'm a responsible denim specialist at the moment for the last 3 years. Before that, 16, 17 years, I've been working in the industry. I've been working for people like M&S, Next, Debenhams, and Fatface. I've been working on multiple products when I first started, outerwear, things like that, but I've always been super geeky into products. I found denim probably about 8 years ago, and it was just like my calling, really. Chemistry, fabrics, washing, all this kind of technique. I just loved it, really. So that's me. So denim washing is an art form of art. So as you can see on the screen, these kind of things like Leanne showed earlier, this is a laser pattern I did in Spain. So we did a laser pattern and all the ripping all in one template with the design that we did. Here, some vintage inspiration we've talked about. This bleaching, how can we reproduce this in washing or laser and things like this? Again, down here, we've got some really kind of nice detailing, playing with chemistry, laser and washing to see the outcomes we can get. And then on the far right, you can see a guy actually 3D molding the jean, how he wants it to come. So what the artist needs? Artist needs materials. So the materials are the most important thing to understand. So this is quite a complex slide, I think, to look at, but I wanted to break it down and give you an idea of how denim works. So dips, what is a dip? A dip is a cotton going into a bath of indigo, and it comes out, it airs, and it fixes, and that's one dip. So every time you put it in again and again and again, it gets darker and darker and darker. So the first slide you can see in raw, which is the top row, it's got 6 to 8 dips. If you rinse it, enzyme bleach it, you can see how it washes down, and see right at the bottom, the circles, you can see it's white in the middle and it's got an indigo ring around the outside. The next one over, 8 dips, it's a bit darker because you can see right at the bottom, it's a dark purpley blue shade. And as you wash it down, it stays a bit darker. It takes a bit more chemistry to wash off, but you might want the darkest shade in your wash. Then the next two I want to talk about are sulfur top and sulfur bottom. This sulfur bottom, you can see right at the bottom, it's a white yarn that is dipped into sulfur first, and it's a yellow sulfur. So it'll pick up yellow first, and then you'll put indigo on the top. And the reason you do that is because you've actually designed the fabric ready for washing. So you'll have the indigo, and as you chip away the indigo, the yellow starts to show itself. And blue and yellow mixing creates a green, so you get a green casting of denim. And as you go down further and further, it goes yellow and yellower. The other way around, you can do indigo and you put black on the top. So then actually you chip off the black first, and as you go through, you find the indigo, and it's a darker indigo. And you can see as you bleach down, it's quite a grayed off kind of, you can't bleach down to white. So this is why you need to, if you want to do a bleach down, you need to pick probably pure indigo. If you want it to stay quite dark, maybe do sulfur top. And then as we go down, you can see we can go 12 plus dips, you can go 16, 18, as much as you want to do, but obviously it adds the price and the time it takes. And the other way around is looking here, you want summer washes, you want mid to light or bleach washes. This quarter dip, 4 dips is a good place to start. You see the raw, it's really quite light. And as you wash it down, it kind of disappears. So with this, and then bromo's another shade, which is quite a unique shade, actually. It's a real bright sulfur shade. So that's your materials to pick at the start. Oh. So here we go. So this is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about dry process, which is on the yellow side, and wet process, which is on the blue side. The key areas that we need to know, sorry, we'll move that around. Dry processing. So this is your mark making. So the mark making, as you can see, this is raw denim. It's been hand scraped up to this one. So you can see the lighter areas is where sandpaper has been scraped and pulled off the indigo, giving you some kind of details to make it look a bit more like a natural indigo or denim jean. Then in wet processing, these are the 5, I think, key areas that we need to know about or understand. Desize, you've heard it mentioned before. This is where you're taking sizing off the fabric and you're preparing it ready for washing, really. Then you're going to take it to the abrasion step, which I'll go into each one of these steps into detail. The abrasion step is literally getting texture out of the fabric. And then you go to color fade, which will be a bleaching. So you're going to go from indigos all the way down to like a white, if you want to go that far. And then local application. So local application will be things like here, you see on the thigh area, you might spray it, or even the next one, you can see it's got little rips in it. That's what I mean about the local application. So there's a category area that a lot of things fall into at the end. And then at the end is finishing. So how do you want it to be finished? How do you want it to feel? Do you want it slightly tinted so that it's vintage? These are the kind of elements we need to think about. So I'm going to jump into these areas. So science of indigo and fade. This is an indigo yarn. And then this is a cross section of yarn. I've just highlighted the inside so you see it's a not dyed yarn. On the outside is the indigo we talked about earlier. But what people don't know is there's a sizing that goes on the outside. So that is to strengthen the yarn as discussed before, but also it holds the indigo. So you need to actually get rid of that before you can start to get some fading and indigo. So what we want to do is like chip the surface off and release the white core, what you can see here. So we will do something called desizing, which means take off the size. So then you just got pure indigo ready to go in your washing stage. This is dry processing, and these are the key areas I would say. You can see things like the whisker area, which is it's cat whiskers, if you remember. From the outside comes out these lines, and that's what it is. Knee starring, it looks like a star around the knee. A lot of them are quite obvious. Honeycomb on the back of the jean, you'll see. It's kind of like a honeycomb. That's why it's called a honeycomb. And then you've got other things like stacking or tram lines, which literally is that you press open your seams and you sand down the side, and then you get these tram lines coming through. So it's quite, when you know the terminology, it's quite straightforward to understand what we're talking about at each stage, because you might say to a factory, or if you're developing something, the whiskers need to be reduced or increased, or the intensity needs to be changed. At least you can know what area of the gene you're talking about, because we do talk about it in isolated areas. So dry processing. This is traditional dry processing. So they'll have the mold we discussed earlier. We'll put it in, and then a guy like this will you see he's got a bit of sandpaper in his hand, and he's really giving it some to scrape these whiskers in, because you want those marks in his jeans. And predominantly most jeans in the industry are still done like this. And then on the back side, you can see you've got 2 guys literally with the sandpaper, but no molds. So they're actually scraping the area out because they want to probably bring the texture out of the fabric. So they're scraping the thigh area to get that character coming out before they go into washing. Because if you scrape off early enough, when you start washing, it will start to come through. And then as you bleach down, you can fade it down. There's these parameters you can play with. And then as discussed, these are the steps on laser. So this is a laser template that I've got. It's the reverse of what you'll get. So anything in black will burn the most, anything in grays, mid, and then white won't burn at all. So you can see, you can really try and get some super details and 3-dimensional looks with a laser. This was a quick trial I did, but then later on I mended it. I didn't want these kind of areas. This was the gene I started with. And then this end one's just one of the production ones. So you see when they're actually in production, the laser's set, they've got 2 tables set. They're doing the fronts on one side, the back on the other side. Those red circles are marking where they're going to burn next. So you got one going, and as soon as that's finished, they start burning the next one, and then the next person. So you've got 2 operators changing, swapping. So one's burning, swap the next one. So as you'll see, this guy on the other side, I think it was flipped round, we'll be putting the next sheet down ready for this one. And there's all the blanks. This is something that's underrated, which you take for granted as well, is the tagging. So what I mean by tagging, this is the corner pocket, right by the scoop. So you normally get plummet lines there on naturally worn in denim. So we would tag that. We literally like a Kimball gun, but short Kimballs. We'd tag in there. We might laser burn here and then Kimball the sides in. So actually the laser burn will give you the mark. The tag will give you a bit more of a 3D fade to it, so it'll look a lot more natural. And knee starring as well. If you want to get knee starring without any laser and you want it to go around the outside, this is what we do with Kimball it. See here, and then the knee tags right here. abrasion. So then the first part of the wet processing after deside is the abrasion. These are traditionally what is used. Pumice stones, this is what it looks like when it's in the machine. After 50% of it probably breaks down after the first wash, and it's not very sustainable. So there's a lot of people looking at a lot of different areas, how we can get rid of it, how we can change it, what other applications are there. So these kind of resin stones, which is a copy of a stone, then it's resin, it's made from some kind of polyester, so that might break down, be bad. We've got some shaped ones, the Tonello no stone we talked about. And then these kind of like Brillo pads, so they scrape the surface, which can be quite good. You can get a good surface texture and not damage the fibres too much. Here's one of the machines actually with no stones. So you can see the equivalent, like when you, all those stones in the machine, once you're finished, you've got to do something called destoning, which means get the stones out and separate them from the jeans before you dry them. So it's just a massive manual job. And then here's an idea on the jeans, what I'm talking about. All these pull lines, you're catching the surface to give this abrasion effect. Then after that step, you want to go into bleaching. So here's a good, I found online. So this is what you do after you desize, 15 minutes, all the way up to 6 hours. Someone just put it in bleach to see how much bleach, then you can see how it works. And bleaches all the way down, so you can understand how the fabric works. Here, this was the over bleach from Tonello discussed. Here on the next slide over, this is the fabric. So this is where you would have picked the fabric and it's just run all year round. So you need to then do a summer dress out of the super dark fabric. So you have to do a super bleach, which will be the middle one. And then after that, you need to do another bleach step to get this super white. So you can see you're literally washing everything out that you put in. Then after that, other ways of bleaching. This is how we would do in the industry. We'll use potassium permanganate. We'll use things like towels, which is the top one, where they'll soak it in a high concentration of PP, and then they'll put it in a drum and they'll tumble it. So we'll just hit and give you more of a soft acid wash and not too textured looking. And then below you've got things like polystyrene balls or corks to move it around and then apply the chemistry. And then all the way down to, if you really want to be really crude with it and just like splash it on, this is how the punks would have done it back in the day with toilet bleach, which is 12% chlorine anyway. So splash it around and you can do things like this. So you can see as a bleach step, there's lots of different ways you can apply it. This is local bleaching. So the first image with the spray gun, this is what it will look like. This isn't PP, this is an alternative they've added color to. And then in production, this is how they do it. They should be doing it on the water system behind, but they're not. They're doing it, holding it by hand, but they've got their masks on. He should have gloves on. They should have their PP on. But as you can see, when PP sprays on, it's pink. And as it dries and starts to work, it'll go brown. So you see, they look like they've got brown all over them. That is PP. They've got all over them. And the far one is one I saw was in Tonello, actually. This is the robot, and it's an example of how it's working, but it hasn't got PP in, it's just spraying water. So the idea is it will spray onto the mannequin. Anything that misses catches on the waterfall system and then runs out, and then it's cleaned right at the bottom. So nothing's in the air like the middle one, really. But at least you get an understanding of how production is now, how we want it to go in the future. A bit more kind of grinding and finishing with rips. So we'll see the edge of pockets and we'll think, yeah, it just naturally comes like that, but everyone does every little bit in denim. So here, this lady on the pocket edges, she's literally just grinding the edges. So when you wash it, it will fluff up a little bit, just a tiny bit, but then it makes it look more natural. Again, inside the coin pocket, someone with a grinder has to go in and grind those little holes in that makes it look really natural. Here, the Japanese kind of way of doing it, we don't normally do this industry because it's quite hard, and one slip and you're through a pair of denim and you have to redo the whole thing. And then here's the slow-mo of if you're going to do rips in the industry. So this is actually a Zara coat, but it had so many rips, it would have taken one person ripping it for minutes, 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. But this is a super slow-mo because it looks so cool that with the fire coming out, but it doesn't catch fire, it just burns the top layer. And then when you wash it, you just got the weft. And this is how they're making multiple rips with high speed in production. Super cool. And then finishing. So in menswear particularly, women's wear not so much. We'll do things like 3D. So what we mean about 3D is we'll apply resin, and literally like, resin we'll apply onto the surfaces we want it to stay, like give it some texture. So here, the whisker area, here on the honeycomb section, and this is how we're done in production. It'll be wet, they'll put it on, they'll pull all the whiskers into shape, they'll get hot iron come down at over 100 degrees and set this in place. And then that will be how it will stay for multiple washes, because that's what some people want. Imagine like G-Star with their 3D garments that look like someone's been wearing them before you've even got them. This is how we'd have to do them in production. So they'll finish off with a recipe. This has 34 steps in. But what I want to do is just highlight the areas that I've talked about. So things like here, the start steps and the dry process. Dry processing, you've got the whisker scrape, you've got the full body scraping, the marble tying is literally, we're tying the jean up, we're cable tying it and then putting it in the laundry to try and get some marks in there. And then we've got some tagging, which I discussed. Desizing would be done at this step because it's such a long process, they've skipped it and just wet out the garment really. And then abrasion, you can see here, they're using enzymes, using anti-bac staining, and they've also got loads and loads of stones in here to really get the texture out of the fabric. Once they're happy with the texture, they'll move on to the bleaching down. You can see here, this is the bleaching step where they got the bleach water with the caustic soda. And then finishing off, this is where I call the local application. You see PP spray, you spray the areas of the jean, the grinding, the destroying that we've seen, that's all done there. And then finishing of the garment, this is where they're actually going to tint it, and then they'll do softening as well. So these are the key steps, but as you can see, there's multiple steps in between that we don't even realize, of draining, re-washing, double rinsing, treble rinsing, but this is how it's done in industry. And here is the highlighted slide of what I've covered today. Let me finish off with some further reading. I'd say, so the Instagram accounts, it's not brands I follow, it's chemical suppliers, machinery company, factories. These guys are putting really cool images, like Fisher on 39, they've got amazing chemistry, but then they've got the guy below is called Juan. He's an artist, he's actually an artist, so he does art as well as create these amazing denim pieces. So when you go and look at them, you can see how far you can take denim washing. There's a few more on there, some are kind of consultancy companies, some are chemistry companies, and then machining companies like Tonello and Candiani. You'll see what they're doing. Anything new they've got coming to the market, it'll be on the Instagram. So follow their Instagram accounts. And then books. The top one I would definitely get. It's really good. It's visual. What I've discussed today, it's in there, really clear to absorb. And then if you want to take it to the next level, go really, really geeky into science, the one below. But it's quite expensive. I think the students can get it for free and download it. I didn't. I found out that later. So I'll just finish my last slide. The art of denim washing is full of possibilities. What will you create? That's it.
Well done, well done, well done. So, whoa, you're so taller than me. Okay, so let's stop showing this for a second. So we've got about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Questions, guys. Let's just see if anyone's asked us questions online as well. But anyone want to ask a question? Please go over to the mic. Yeah. Do you use enzyme in your systems to get very nice effects?
I think that was from Leanne's, but yes, we use enzymes.
Okay. There are no questions online. So guys, any questions? If not, I'm going to have a nice conversation with Rowan for 5 minutes. So any questions? Any questions? I can ask you a question to get this guy going. Which effects are you most excited about as a designer in regards to like sustainability? Obviously, you know about the past and you know about the present. So what excites you going forward in the next 20 years?
I'd say cutting out pollution, cutting out things that we don't have to do. Laser, what we've seen, can do amazing stuff. I think it's about being clever with your tools. It's new tools, new possibilities. There's new ways we can do it. We don't need sandpaper and stone. There's other ways we can do it. We just have to explore them, I'd say.
And obviously, when it comes to washing, what fibers are you using that can produce really good washing outcomes? Is it a recycled cotton that can get nice effects from? Is it a hemp or a tencel? Is it cotton? Is it the polyesters of the world that you're getting good effects from?
It's cotton, like cotton as we know it. That's what we work with predominantly. But other fibers coming through. So let's see. But the thickness of the cotton with the indigo on the outside is great.
And the ring dyeing and the sizing, that's a big part of what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, just so our friends here know, most mills, they dip like 6, 7, 8 times, but our Japanese friends dip even more, right?
Yeah, a lot more. Yeah, 6, 7, 8, this kind of area. And then the sizing, like we heard earlier, can be synthetic or it can be like cornstarch, potato starch, these kind of things. It all depends. So if you can understand the fabric and you've tested it, like on laser and washing, then you know what you can do. But if you haven't tested it, then you could say, I've had it in the past where we want that gene that is an indigo dyed and this is a sulfur, and go, we want to match it. It comes through and they go, it doesn't match. You're like, it was never going to match.
And
when you get close.
Every single fabric behaves differently even with the same wash recipe, right?
100%.
So you have to do all that work all over again.
It depends. If you've got pure indigo, it generally can work. If it's darker, you might need more chemistry. But if you've got a sulfur in the top or the bottom, you need to. They're two different dyes, so you have to attack them different ways. So if you want to clean it up and get rid of the dirty yellow from that sulfur, you have to use something different than bleaching the indigo, and it can bleach out just that and not the indigo. But that's why these guys are artists.
But you still love being an artist. You like creating washing by hand and using sandpaper. It's good to learn that
Oh,
method.
yeah.
You need to learn it to,
Yeah,
to become a better designer, right?
Yeah, we're not all fortunate to have lasers.
We've got 2 minutes left, guys. Anyone got one question? Please come to the front. Hopefully the mic's turned on. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. Which process is like the most optimal? And by optimal, I mean which one is the most sustainable and at the same time is giving the best effects on the fabric?
Enzymes we've always used. They've been modified, so they're supercharged now, but we don't need to neutralize enzymes. So if you focus on using enzymes, you don't need to neutralize it later and use more water and stuff. But hypochlorite, you've got to neutralize it. So you need 2 bad chemicals to make one, but it bleaches so well. So it's kind of, you've got to work out the give and take. If you pick the right fabric and you do enzymes, you can probably get down to the level you want without jumping to bleaches and stuff like that.
Okay, does the enzymes and the bleach, for example, do they like damage the fabric in the same way?
It depends what it is, because when you go into the science world, you want it to attack the indigo and not the fiber. So then stones attacks both. Enzymes can, depends on what regions, because there's multiple different enzymes you can use as well. But you pick the right enzyme, it will take off the indigo and damage the fibers less.
So when basically the case is to bleach, like the indigo not damage the fabric, can we just like help bleach the fabric, or just like dip it like lighter in different places, like that would work more sustainably?
100%. And if you didn't want to do that way, you could, like Leanne said, if you did water spots and then put it into ozone, wherever the water is, it will bleach. Where it's not, it won't bleach. So you can actually do it that way using air.
Yeah, or just like in the process of bleaching, you can just like not dip it all the way in. Like for example, you want flat jeans and you want that area lighter, you can dip it that way.
I think I'll just say one more thing about bleaching, guys. Just be very careful when you do it at home. We're not encouraging you guys to go ahead and do it, but there are clever ways of doing it. You can some bleach stuff. You can do really clever. There's other ways of doing stuff that you can do.
Everything I'm talking about, I'm not talking about doing at home. I'm talking about doing in a laundry that I work in.
But you will get access to lasers, and you can do some hand finishing. So there are ways to enhance your garments at the end, but do your tests first. Rowan, thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you so much for the questions.